Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of KRAD COVID Readings. I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido, here to cure the coronavirus blues by reading my writing. We're going back to one of my earliest pieces of writing. This is a story that came out in 1996, and much more to the point, it is a story that gave me a fascinating and bizarre and lengthy and completely irrelevant distinction. By having a story in this anthology, which was a Doctor Who anthology called DECALOG 3, subtitled Consequences, I became the first native-born American citizen to write linear adult Doctor Who fiction. I have to qualify it that much because John Peel is a naturalized American citizen, and he beat me to the punch. In addition, a guy named William Keith, no relation, did a Choose Your Own Adventure book before I did, for a Kids Choose Your Own Adventure Doctor Who book, and he was American also. But if you just count John and you just count the Choose Your Own Adventure thing, then I'm the first American to write official Doctor Who fiction. Like I said, completely irrelevant distinction. This anthology was published by Virgin Press. It was actually one of the last books that Virgin did before they lost the Doctor Who license and it went over to BBC Books. In this particular anthology, which was edited by Justin Richards and Andrew Lane, each story affected the next story. There were 10 stories altogether, obviously, Decalogue. The story prior to mine had the Fifth Doctor being chased by some authorities, and to sort of throw them off the scent, the Doctor said, "Oh, I think somebody who knows about what's going on is back there." He just pointed that back there without knowing if anybody was there. Turns out there was somebody there, and that person, it rather badly affected that person's life. That person decided to find out about the Doctor and take his revenge, which is what happens in my story, which is called United We Fall, or United We Fall. It's UNIT, as in the United Nations Intelligence Task Force from Doctor Who, with an ED at the end, We Fall. It's a really hard story to say out loud. I think that's part of why I didn't read this until now. Anyway, from Decalogue 3, which, by the way, also has the first ever Doctor Who story in it by some guy named Stephen Moffat. I always wondered what happened to him. But more seriously, that story by Moffat is actually an excellent story called Continuity Errors. In many ways, it's the first draft of the Christmas episode called A Christmas Carol, as it's about the Seventh Doctor who basically goes back in time and meddles in somebody's personal history. It's a great story, and after I read that story in here, and I found out later, he wrote the parody, The Curse of the Fatal Death, and then he was put on the staff, one of the writers for the new Doctor Who when it launched in 2005, and then took over as showrunner after that. I was very pleased. And it all started in this book, which also has me in it. Anyway, I think that's everything. Without further ado, here is United We Fall. How much longer do I have to wait? According to the nameplate on her cluttered desk, the young woman's name was Holly Roman. She didn't even look up at Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart, retired, as she answered his question with a lackadaisical, "As soon as Mr. Fontaine's done with his meeting, Brigadier, he'll see you." Lethbridge Stewart refused to let his annoyance at this tiresome American woman show through. Even after a decade and a half of retirement, he was too good a soldier for that. He looked at his watch. It read 9:27. His meeting with Stephen Joseph Fontaine III, attorney at law, had been scheduled for 0900 at the offices of Nissen Gibson Fontaine. Lethbridge Stewart had always prided himself on punctuality, and he found it particularly galling that these Americans refused to do likewise. After what seemed ages, though Lethbridge Stewart's watch insisted that it was only 3 minutes, the door to one of the other offices opened to permit several people to come out. One, a tall, dignified-looking gentleman in a light gray suit with hair to match, headed for the Brigadier while the others left the reception area. This had to be UNIT's American counsel. As the Brigadier stood up from the reception area couch, the man offered his hand. "You must be Brigadier Stewart. Pleasure, sir. I'm Stephen Fontaine." "That's Lethbridge Stewart," he replied, returning the handshake. "Oh, I'm sorry," Fontaine said with a genuine look of regret. "I obviously misread the files and missed a hyphen." "Quite all right," the Brigadier said brusquely, not wishing to dwell on it. Fontaine indicated the way to his office. "In any event, we should get started. We do have a great deal of ground to cover before the hearings start up this afternoon." "In that case," the Brigadier said plainly as he followed the Fontaine into his office, "perhaps we should have started this meeting on time." "You're absolutely right, of course, Brigadier. Again, I must apologize. The partners' meeting ran a bit longer than it should have. Please, have a seat." Lethbridge Stewart followed Fontaine into a massive office. Shag carpeting lined the floor. Bookcases stuffed with huge tomes decorated the walls to his left and right, and directly in front of him sat an oak desk that had to be at least 2 meters wide. Behind it, the entire back wall was taken up with a picture window that provided a magnificent view of the East River. The middle of Fontaine's desk was festooned with wire baskets, and from one of them he retrieved a folder as he sat down. "Now then, Brigadier, I assume you know why you've been summoned to New York." Summoned, the Brigadier thought, but let it go. The letters he'd received from the secretary and from Brigadier Bambera were requests. Strong requests, admittedly, but hardly a summons. "I was told," he said, "that the Oversight Committee that monitors units' requisitions has called a hearing to investigate some appropriations made by the British Division over the years." Fontaine nodded. "Particularly, I'm afraid, during your tenure as head of the British Division. I was also told by Brigadier Bambera," and here Lethbridge Stewart allowed a tiny amount of annoyance to creep into his tone, "that her equipment has been impounded and shipped here, and that her soldiers are on standby pending the results of this investigation." "I'm afraid so," Fontaine said. "However, I've been going over the requisitions that the committee will be asking you about, and I can say with confidence that you don't have too much to worry about. Most of them are just fine. In fact," and at this Fontaine once again smiled his pleasant smile, "at first I began to wonder if this was all some kind of wild goose chase to keep some bureaucrat from losing his job." "I'm glad to hear that," the Brigadier said neutrally. He had thought much the same thing, of course, but saw no reason to say so outright. "Although," Fontaine continued, "I can see why there might be a certain amount of trepidation on their parts. Well, for example, your ammunition requests are quite extreme. It is necessary for the types of threats unit faces to..." Fontaine held up a hand, and again the smile returned. "Easy, Brigadier. You're preaching to the choir. Of course, I understand the need for these requisitions, but I have to look at how the committee will react." The smile then fell. "Unfortunately, I was a bit concerned about a large number of items from your scientific branch. In particular," and here he shuffled through several papers until he came across the one he obviously wanted, "ones made by the British Division's unpaid scientific advisor throughout unit's first decade or so. Computers, top-of-the-line scanning equipment. Honestly, Brigadier, I can't even figure out who this advisor is. He's not listed on any of the payroll vouchers." "He wouldn't be, Mr. Fontaine. He was, as you said, an unpaid scientific advisor." "A fair point," Fontaine said with a somewhat less pleasant smile. "But I'm afraid I'm going to need some kind of justification for this. Well, exorbitance is the only word that comes to mind to describe these requisitions." Lethbridge Stewart sighed. "That will be difficult. The doctor is a very unique individual." "This doctor, whoever he is the advisor?" "Yes, a type of freelance consultant, I suppose you could call him. Not the most reliable chap in the world sometimes, but he always came through in a crisis. In many ways, the doctor is responsible for unit's existence." Unbidden images of the hideous web that crippled London's underground, courtesy of the Yeti, and of a Cyberman invasion came to the fore of the Brigadier's thoughts. Even after all these years, the memories of those terrible days remained strong. "If not for the doctor, and his requisitions, I sincerely doubt there would be a planet left for the pair of us to be discussing these issues on." Fontaine did not look convinced. "Fact remains, Brigadier, that we are discussing them, and frankly, a great deal of what I have in this file is, at best, an outrageous abuse of the doctor's access to U.S. equipment. You can rest assured, Mr. Fontaine, that if the doctor made those requisitions, he had good reason." "Well, perhaps you and I can rest assured, Brigadier, but I doubt the committee will buy that particular line of reasoning." Fontaine then hesitated. Lethbridge Stewart got the feeling he was not going to like what the counselor would say next. "These are much more open times, Brigadier. In your day, it was unlikely that word would get out that one of the UN's top-secret divisions had been spending large sums of money. Frankly, we can't count on that anymore. And the outcry against the British division's expenditures would be extreme. Now, our best course of action would be to get this doctor person in here to testify." Lethbridge Stewart sighed. He had been hoping it would not come to that, but he supposed it would be inevitable. However, summoning the doctor could prove difficult. Before he could voice this objection to Fontaine, he noticed a familiar sound, growing in intensity. The Brigadier allowed the tiniest hint of a smile to play across his lips as he saw the blue form of a police box slowly materialize approximately 1 meter to Fontaine's left. "What the hell's that?" Fontaine cried, his placid face suddenly a mask of confusion. "That," Mr. Fontaine would be the Doctor. The Time Lord always did know how to make an entrance. The Brigadier was surprised to see that the Doctor who emerged from the TARDIS was the tall one who wore the long scarf. He hadn't encountered this Doctor in almost 2 decades. Although of roughly the same height as Lethbridge Stewart, this incarnation of the Time Lord always carried himself as though he towered over everyone. His presence discommoded the Brigadier, but only slightly. He'd encountered Doctors out of sequence before, so to speak. Of course, both times it happened, the entirety of time and space was threatened. Somewhere under his curly hair and large hat, a smile burst forth. "Hello, Brigadier! So good to see you again. How are things with Unit?" Without waiting for a reply, he turned to Fontaine, presently standing with his mouth hanging open in what Lethbridge Stewart thought a most undignified manner, and said, "Hello, I'm the Doctor. I'm very pleased to make your acquaintance. Now then, Brigadier," he said, turning back to Lethbridge Stewart without pausing for breath, "what have you been doing with yourself all these years? I assume it is many years, since I can't imagine you aging that quickly." "Quite right, Doctor. Since, last we met, I've retired. Turned the British division over to new blood, so to speak. Still, I occasionally pitch in and help out, as I'm doing today." "Ah, yes, well, that brings us nicely to the relevant point, that being what it is that's so urgent that you felt the need to engage the recall device." The Brigadier blinked. "The recall device?" "Yes, I did instruct that it only be used in emergencies. But still, I was between engagements, as it were. I'm always happy to visit old Earth again." The Doctor turned to look through the window. "Ah! New York! I won't have been here for several years ago now." Before Lethbridge Stewart could say anything further, Fontaine exploded. "What the hell is going on here? Who is this guy?" Gone was the urbane, collected Stephen Fontaine, who had been calmly telling the Brigadier about public outcries and outrageous appropriations. In his place stood a man whose world had tilted somewhat sharply and who was trying desperately to regain his footing. Lethbridge Stewart recognized the look, as he often had it himself in his early dealings with the Time Lord. "Mr. Fontaine, this is the Doctor, the Unit's unpaid scientific advisor. Doctor, this is Stephen Joseph Fontaine III, Unit's American Counsel." "Ah, a member of the legal profession," the Doctor said with a nod. "That would explain the opulent office, the books on the bookshelf, and that rather unfortunate tie. In any case, Brigadier, what exactly is the emergency that brought me here?" Fontaine pointed at the Doctor and asked, "This is the unpaid scientific advisor?" Giving Fontaine a cautionary glance, the Brigadier said, "Let me explain, Doctor. You see, Unit's British division has been made the subject of an appropriations hearing. I'm afraid we're in danger of being shut down due to massive expenditures that the committee that controls such things is a touch wary of. Pending the results, the division's equipment has been impounded, the soldiers placed on standby." "An appropriations hearing? Brigadier, are you trying to tell me that the recall device, a device I gave you with the utmost reluctance, and which is only to be used in the instance of a world-threatening emergency, was used to bring me halfway across the galaxy for an appropriations hearing?" "No, Doctor, I am not telling you that." The Doctor frowned. "You're not. I didn't deploy the recall device. No one did. It's one of the pieces of equipment that have been impounded. However, your coming is fortuitous. We'll need you to testify before the committee this afternoon." Fontaine, having finally regained some measure of his composure, came back into the conversation. "I'm sorry, Brigadier, but this gentleman is not testifying." "I must agree with Mr. Fontaine, Brigadier. I have better things to do with my time than babble in front of bureaucrats." The Brigadier set his jaw. This wasn't the first time he'd had to face down the Time Lord, and it probably wouldn't be the last either. "Doctor, the primary reason why it was deemed necessary to even call a hearing was the somewhat unusual requisitions made by the British Division's unpaid scientific advisor, the vast majority of which were nonsensical, incomprehensible, and impossible for anyone to justify." "Incomprehensible?" The Doctor faced the Brigadier nose to nose. "Brigadier, anything I requested was important, no, critical, to my continuing researches." "Be that as it may, Doctor, you are the only one who can justify these expenditures. And if you cannot, it is quite possible that the British division will be deemed wasteful and dissolved." Fontaine interrupted. "Brigadier, I can't put this reject from the Harpo Marx lookalike contest in front of the committee." Realizing he had lost control again, Fontaine took a breath, then continued in a quieter tone. "Even if he can justify the expenditures, there is simply no way the committee will take him seriously. I mean, look at him. Listen to him. The man has just calmly stated he's from another galaxy." "This galaxy, actually," the Doctor said, then turned to Lethbridge Stewart. "Very well, Brigadier, if you insist. I will testify before this committee. What time is the hearing?" 1600 hours at the UN building. "What time is it now?" "Approximately 0950 hours. "Excellent. I will meet you there." The Doctor walked to the office door and opened it. "Hold on a second, please," Fontaine pleaded. The doctor stopped halfway through the doorway and turned back toward the attorney. Is there a problem, Mr. Fontaine? If you are going to testify, we have to review your testimony, examine the evidence. See, we can... Yes. I'm sure there are 1,000 things we can do to justify your no doubt exorbitant retainer, but it's completely unnecessary. The committee will ask about the equipment I requisitioned. I will answer the questions, and that will be that. Simple, The doctor finished with a huge grin. No, it's not that simple. Do you have any idea of the legal complications involved? The doctor resumed his walk through the door. Oh, I have a very good idea, Mr. Fontaine. I simply choose to ignore them. Now, if you'll excuse me, since I am in New York, I'm going to take in the sights. I haven't been to the Metropolitan Museum of Art since 50 years from now. Fontaine stood with his mouth hanging open as the doctor left, then cried out after him, What about this damn phone booth in my office? Robin Omington looked at his watch. Come on, damn it, Holly, call me. Tell me he's arrived. Calm down. Stay calm. Don't want your employer to think anything's amiss now, do we? After all, that would blow my cover. Nobody's ever broken my cover before. Strictly speaking, that wasn't true, but Robin didn't like to think about that. It just made him mad, and he couldn't afford to get mad, as he'd blow his cover. It always came back to that somehow. Only blown my cover once, just once, you bastard, and it ruined me. You'll pay for that. Oh, yes. The phone rang. He pounced on it. Robin Omington, he said. Robin, it's Holly. Something's wrong. That doctor guy showed up. I don't know how he came in. He didn't come in through the front door. But anyhow, he showed up after I pushed that button you told me to push, and then he left. When? Robin said anxiously. He can't leave. God damn it. Why did he leave? About 3 seconds ago. Mr. Fontaine and that Brigadier are still here. Damn. He wasn't supposed to leave. Well, that's what I thought. How could you let him leave? What do you mean let him? How was I supposed to stop? Never mind. Robin's mind raced. Everything had been so perfect. How could it be messed up now? Then a thought occurred. Are you sure it was him? He asked. What did he look like? I didn't really get a good look at his face. He had on his big hat and coat and this amazing scarf. That's him, all right. One of them, anyhow. Damn it! It's been so much work to set this up. Now he's ruined it all. Again. He always messes things up. Holly, did he say anything that might have indicated where he was going? The other end of the line grew silent, presumably while Holly thought about it. This could take hours, Robin thought uncharitably, but then Holly's inability to think was precisely why he recruited her for this mission. She had been willing to believe his convincing lies about why he needed to lure the doctor here. Finally, I think he was going to the Met. Why do I bother? They don't show operas at 10 in the morning, Holly. Not the Metropolitan Opera, silly. The Metropolitan Museum. Robin cursed himself. Of course it wasn't the opera, you moron. That's perfect. I'll be by in about 15 minutes to get the recall device. The what? The blue thing I gave you that had the button to push. Oh, that. I'll see you in a bit. And without waiting for her to say anything, he hung up. He couldn't believe it. Everything had been set up. Robin had stolen the doctor's equipment from Impound and given it to Betancourt to make into a bomb. Betancourt had questioned this. His own equipment was more reliable, but Robin didn't want the bomb to be traceable except to the doctor himself. Not that Betancourt needed the protection. After all, the bomb maker's friends in high places had kept him out of jail thus far. Robin then planted the bomb in the committee room. Holly had used the stolen recall device to summon the doctor to Fontaine's office so he'd be prepared to testify. Then he'd go to the UN building, not suspecting a thing, and die horribly. Just like he deserves. Screwing me over and getting me stuck with low-level infiltration and surveillance. No promotions, no advancement, stagnation, purgatory, misery. And it's all the doctor's fault. But now the doctor's going to the Metropolitan Bloody Museum of all places, which means he's probably contrived some excuse not to testify. Oh, then I'll just have to take care of it myself, won't I? He opened his bottom desk drawer. In it sat the revolver he'd got his hands on as a backup. His superiors never issued him with a weapon. After all, his work primarily involved surveillance. The guns were left to others. If not for the doctor, I'd have my own gun. I'd be one of those others who get to carry them. But no, I'm just a low-level spook, and that's all I'll be, Doctor. You'll pay for that. Dearly. Informing his titular supervisor that he had some errands to run before the hearings this afternoon, Robin left the UN building and made his way to the offices of Nissen Gibson Fontaine to retrieve the recall device. Just like with the bomb, I don't want to leave any kind of trail behind. Ah, yes, excellent, Robin heard the doctor say to no one in particular, staring at one of the carvings on the wall of the Temple of Dendur. You know, he said to an elderly woman who happened to be walking by. They were talking about simplifying things by only displaying 1 foot in the side view, but I told them, don't be ridiculous. On a flat plane like this, with this style, you have to show both feet, 1 foot in front of the other. Otherwise it'll look as if they've only got 1 foot. Robin gritted his teeth as he read the card next to the alligator statue that sat in the moat that the museum had placed around the temple. It had been like this for almost 2 hours. From the Lila Atchison Wallace wing, where Robin finally found the doctor carrying on about how he told Surratt not to use so many dots, to the Arms and Armor collection, where he mentioned that Charles V never wore anything that ornate when he met him, to the American wing, where he explained to passers-by that they should enjoy it now, as the whole wing would be torn down in a little under 75 years. Now he stood there going on about advice he gave to the ancient Egyptians who built the Temple of Dendur. I can't take this anymore. No more. He's got to die now. This second. But he held himself back. Drawing attention to himself inside a crowded museum would be a mistake. Firing a gun inside the Met would bring a whole heap of trouble down, and escape would be damn near impossible. Listen to him go on and on like a gibbering idiot, wearing that stupid scarf and not even sweating, even though it's midsummer and there's all these people around and he's ruined everything and he doesn't even care. He's just standing there admiring the artwork. Maybe it would be a mistake, but right now I don't care. The doctor stood near a sarcophagus that sat right under the floor-to-ceiling window. That window, which led out into Central Park, took up the entire north wall of this ground-floor exhibit area. Robin approached the doctor slowly, knowing that he would have nowhere to run except right at Robin himself. Here. It ends here. No more waiting, no more planning. Now he dies. About 10 feet from the doctor, he unholstered the gun. There was no room, there was no temple. There was no sarcophagus. There was just the doctor, Robin, and Robin's gun. Sweat formed on his brow, but he ignored it. He took aim. His hands shook, but he forced himself to remain steady. Someone screamed. He pulled the trigger. The bullet missed the doctor, instead hitting the window behind him. It made an odd slamming sound, not at all the crashing noise Robin expected from cracking glass. More people screamed and fell to the ground. An alarm clanged in his ears. One of the blue-uniformed guards, an older man who looked about as intimidating as a flea, ran towards Robin. The doctor turned toward him. He said something, but Robin couldn't hear for the alarm clanging over and over again. Robin took another shot. This too missed, striking instead the stone sarcophagus and ricocheting into the window. Another odd slamming noise. This looks a lot easier on television, Robin thought as he tried to aim more carefully. His hands still shook, worse than before, but he had to stay steady. After all these years, I can't mess it up now. The doctor turned and ran straight for the window, specifically the part of the window that had been cracked by Robin's 2 shots, wrapping his hands in that stupid scarf as he ran. Oh no, Robin thought as he realized the doctor did have another way out, through the window. Robin started running after him, pausing only to knock the guard down with an elbow to the stomach. The alarm kept clanging. People kept screaming. The sweat was starting to get in Robin's eyes. His hands now protected by his scarf, the doctor took a running jump right into the weakened glass. It shattered, and the doctor ran into Central Park. Cursing, Robin wiped the sweat from his eyes, took another shot, which also missed, then ran after his prey, several other guards on his heels. Had he been chasing someone else, Robin would probably have lost him in the verdant park, full as it was of people sunbathing, walking, jogging, rollerblading, and so forth. But the doctor's distinctive mode of dress made him easy to track down. Robin chased the doctor westward for a bit, then south down the paved road behind the museum. The doctor cut right toward Cleopatra's Needle, then through to the Great Lawn, but Robin did not give up the chase. He could not after all this. Once they were out on the lawn, Robin took another shot. It too missed, but Robin decided to blame that on the fact that both he and his target were in motion. The various and sundry people around them took little notice of one man chasing another, but when Robin fired his gun, several decided to either scream or to run, or both. Robin ignored them. The doctor continued onward, running across the softball fields that dotted the lawn, some of which had games in progress, towards Belvedere Lake. As Robin followed, one of the softball players tried to stop him, but Robin just knocked him over without breaking stride. No one's coming between us, Doctor. If only I can catch up. He only had 2 bullets left, and as had been made abundantly clear, he simply did not have the skill to fire accurately from anything other than point-blank range. The doctor continued running toward the seaweed-choked lake. Oh, Christ, he's not going to jump in, is he? But no, the doctor cut left to run around the lake. Robin continued to chase him, wiping more sweat from his brow. Shouldn't have worn the jacket in this heat, he thought, looking down at his chest, but I had to conceal the gun somehow. Complications. There are always damn complications. His quarry ran around the circumference of the lake. If he kept going, he'd take the paved road that led up the hill to Belvedere Castle, a small edifice that sat overlooking the lake and the Great Lawn. Perfect. This all started in a castle, only fitting that I ended here. Indeed, the doctor did run straight up the tree-lined path that led to the castle, which these days served as a weather station, as well as providing a nice view of the park. If Robin was lucky, the doctor would run into a cul-de-sac, and then Robin would finally have him. Sure enough, the doctor took a sharp right and found himself up against a small wall, beyond which sat a rather big drop into the lake. Other people milled about, taking in the view and reading the plaques that described the tiny castle. Robin fired his gun into the air to get everyone's attention, and then cried, "Everyone get away from here, now!" He pointed the gun right at the doctor. "Except you." Most people got away from there. The two young men didn't seem to want to leave. "Yo, what's up with this?" Robin pointed his gun at the pair of them. "I said, get away." The two kids put up their hands and moved slowly off, muttering curses to themselves. "Excuse me, may I interject a word here?" the doctor asked. "If you want. Or you could just turn and jump, it'd save me the trouble." "I'd rather not. I've never been fond of falls from great heights. Well, that is to say, the falls themselves are quite fine. However, there's this jarring stop at the end that's most unpleasant." "Shut up! All you do is talk and talk and talk." "Well, not all I do, no. Sometimes I ask questions. For example, one that springs to mind on this particular occasion is why?" Robin's mouth fell open. "Why? You have the gall to ask why." The doctor shrugged. "It is the first question that springs to mind when someone starts shooting at me for no good reason." "You don't remember, do you? After you deliberately set the castle wardens on me." "Well, this castle doesn't have any wardens." Robin rolled his eyes. He was as bad as Holly. "Not this castle, you jackass! Trentilis Castle!" "What, old David Gosthorpe's place?" Robin's eyes widened. "You do remember." "Remember what?" Snarling, Robin said, "That castle! That woman dying! Those guards being set on me! The little girl! All my surveillance work shot completely to hell." "Sorry, that doesn't ring any bells. Perhaps you're mixing me up with someone else. People tell me I have that kind of face, you know." "Shut up!" Robin cried, aiming his gun at the doctor's temple. "It was you! You had a different face, but I've read your file. You've had repeated plastic surgery. And don't tell me you don't remember. You destroyed my entire career. 2 years of work investigating David Gosthorpe's business dealings, and you ruined it by telling those guards that someone else around the corner could help them. They questioned me for an hour and blew my cover. Do you have any idea what that meant? After that, it was nothing but crap-ass surveillance and infiltration. Kind of low-level garbage they give to the new recruits. It wasn't until they had me infiltrate the UN that I found Unit's files, including the one on you." "Unit? Do you mean a unit of measurement?" Robin blinked. "Don't pull this crap on me. You've been associated with Unit for years." "Oh, you mean it's an organization of some sort?" the doctor said, a look of realization spreading over his face. "That's not possible," Robin thought. "He can't not know Unit. He can't, damn it. You think you can play dumb, don't you? Well, it won't work. You think you're here by accident?" He took the recall device out of his jacket pocket. "I'm the one who brought you here with this thing. I'm the one who drew the committee's attention to your stupid requisitions." "Requisitions? I'm afraid I have no idea what you're talking about. Perhaps if you..." "Don't give me that, goddammit. I know you're here for that hearing with the UN because I brought you here for it. And I'm the one who used your old equipment to build the bomb and have it planted in the hearing room so you'd finally pay for what you did. But no. You couldn't just go to the damned hearing and get blown up. You had to go gallivanting off to this damn museum so you can convince everyone that you're crazy. That's all you do, isn't it?" "What, convince people that I'm crazy?" "No! You ruin things!" Robin's throat grew hoarse from all the yelling. His breathing had become more rapid. "This is all going wrong. He's supposed to be begging me for mercy, not..." "Freeze!" Robin whirled around to see 2 uniformed police officers, each holding a gun on him. "Don't move, son." The darker-skinned cop, whose nameplate read Hawkins, continued. "Just put the gun down, and nobody will get hurt." The fair-haired one, who was named Drew, looked over at the doctor. "You okay, sir?" "Oh, fine. Merely having a bracing chat with this fellow here." Robin couldn't believe it. "I should have just shot him when I had the chance, when he pulled that stupid act." And then it hit him. Stupid act. It was all an act. The doctor had manipulated Robin into telling him everything and stalled long enough for the police to arrive. Oldest trick in the book, and I fell for it. His gun still aimed at the doctor's head, he said, "Officers, this is official government business. You're in over your head. This man is extremely dangerous." Hawkins said, "This man has bad taste in clothes, but that don't make him dangerous. Now please put the gun down." "You don't know what you're doing. I'm telling you to put the gun down, sir. Now." "Not now, not when I'm so damn close." "Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time to put the gun down." Robin turned sharply toward the officer, still holding the gun. Too late, Robin realized he now had the gun trained on Drew, and he knew exactly how the 2 officers would react. Before he could lower the gun, both Drew and Hawkins opened fire. Then everything went black. The doctor groaned inwardly as the 2 police officers fired on the man who'd been chasing him. As soon as he fell, the doctor ran over to him. "Sir, don't touch him. He appears to have fallen into a coma," the doctor said without looking up. The man's gun was still in his right hand, with the recall device in his left. The doctor grabbed the device and put it in his own pocket. The blonde-haired officer grabbed the doctor's arm. Sir, you just took evidence. I took what is mine. I can assure you, you wouldn't know what to do with it, and I might need it. Now, this man has just told me that he's planted a bomb in the United Nations building. What? The other officer said. Look, I'm afraid we're going to have to take you down to the station so we can sort... There isn't time! The doctor hissed. He said he made this bomb from my old equipment. Do you have any clue what that means? No, I don't. Look, officer... He looked down at the man's nameplate. Hawkins, I don't have time to chat just now. There's a bomb I'll need to defuse. What time is it? Hawkins blinked and shook his head. What? The other one said, it's about 20 to 4. And there's no time to lose. I must be off. He turned and started to run off, then turned back when he remembered something. If you want to be useful, officer, contact your bomb squad and tell them to get over to the United Nations. It could be very important. Wait a minute! But the doctor ran off. He was worried that the two officers might give chase, but they seemed to have lent some credence to what the doctor said, as the blonde-haired one was yelling into his radio. That came as something of a relief to the doctor, who had half expected them to hold him at gunpoint until long after things had gotten out of hand. Always good to get some variety once in a while. He ran towards Fifth Avenue in search of a cab. The Brigadier looked at his watch for the 8th time in the past 5 minutes while sitting on the bench outside the room where the appropriations hearing had begun. Take it easy, Lethbridge Stewart, he admonished himself. The doctor will be here. Besides, Fontaine isn't finished with the preliminaries yet. But the doctor was late, and that worried the Brigadier. The doctor was capable of being punctual, but he also had a tendency to get distracted, sometimes for days on end. And usually it was by something that threatened the very existence of humanity or the entire cosmos. And then the Brigadier smiled. I wonder how Fontaine would react to my telling him that the doctor couldn't testify because he was off fighting a Yeti attack on the Empire State Building, he thought. Retirement had given the Brigadier a sense of mischief he hadn't had since his school days. Fontaine then came through the large oak double doors to the hearing room. He had on his smile, but this time it didn't quite make it to the counselor's eyes. His eyes looked frightened. Well, Brigadier, the preliminaries are finished. I've called the doctor to testify. The smile fell, and the fright extended to the rest of his face. He's not here yet, is he? I'm afraid not, Lethbridge Stewart admitted. But I'm sure he'll be here any minute. The smile returned to the bottom part of his face. Oh, good. Yes, that'll be excellent. Most wonderful. Indeed. Fontaine clapped his hands for no reason that the Brigadier could discern, then started pacing. He'd been like this all afternoon, ever since the doctor had left. As they had looked out over the various bits of documentation, every once in a while Fontaine would just trail off and stare at the doctor's TARDIS, then resume in mid-sentence as if he'd never been distracted. It made for a most disjointed briefing. Ah, good, Brigadier, you're here. I was hoping you would be. Has the bomb squad arrived yet? Lethbridge Stewart looked up to see the doctor approaching hurriedly, several UN guards about 4 paces behind him. Fontaine's eyes widened. Bomb squad? What are you talking about, Doctor? One of the guards says, This man claims there's a bomb in the hearing room, sir? Then there probably is, the Brigadier said. Of course there is, the doctor said testily. So we shouldn't waste time. I assume, he continued, indicating the double doors, that the hearing room is through here? Fontaine began. Yes, the committee... Excellent, the doctor interrupted and made a beeline for the doors. Wait, you can't just go in there without being... The Brigadier sighed and turned to one of the guards. Is the front desk prepared to show the bomb squad through? Yes, they are, sir, but good. I'd suggest you start making plans for evacuation. And with that, he turned to follow the doctor into the hearing room. A long desk took up at the rear of the room, behind which sat 7 men and women of varying nationalities. The Brigadier assumed them to be the Oversight Committee. In all his years with the organization, he had never encountered them. He, after all, reported to Unit HQ in Geneva. However, Unit HQ reported to these people. Always someone higher up in the chain of command, isn't there? He mused. The doctor stood in the center of the room, holding a device of some sort in his right hand. The committee members were making noises of outrage. Without looking up from the device, the doctor said, Ladies and gentlemen, I do apologize for the inconvenience. I'm the doctor, and I'm supposed to be testifying before you today, but I'm afraid a more pressing concern has come up, and I must... He interrupted himself when the device beeped. Then he approached a woman on the far left of the rear table. Excuse me, madam, but I'm afraid you'll have to get up for a moment. You see, there's a bomb under your chair. The woman got up quickly. The other 6 committee members did likewise with great dispatch. The doctor knelt and turned over the chair to reveal a strange piece of equipment. Just then, a group of black-uniformed men and women entered, led by a tall man with curly blonde hair sticking out from under a black cap emblazoned with the letters NYPD. All right, I'm going to have to ask everyone to clear the room. The head of the committee, a short Indian gentleman who seemed quite befuddled by all of this, asked, Excuse me, but who are you? Lieutenant Bodroff, NYPD Bomb Squad. We got a call that there was a bomb in a UN building and the front desk directed us here. Said some military bigwig told them to expect us. Now, my people are going to escort everyone out of here while we sort out the situation. Very well. the committee head said, and proceeded hastily to the exit, as did the other committee members. Various clerks, the stenographer, Fontaine, and others, led by Bottroff's men. The Brigadier did not leave just yet, nor, unsurprisingly, did the doctor. Indeed, the Time Lord had yet to acknowledge Bottroff's existence. "Excuse me," Bottroff said, leaning over the kneeling figure of the doctor. "Unless it's quite urgent, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to wait a moment. I'm in the midst of some very delicate work here." "Sir, there may be a bomb in the room, and I know there's a bomb!" The doctor continued to not look at Bottroff, concentrating on what he was doing. "What do you think I'm trying to defuse?" Bottroff's eyes widened, and he grabbed the doctor by the shoulder, turning the Time Lord towards him. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I can't have civilians tampering in this—" "Civilians?" the doctor protested. The lieutenant raised his gun. "Please, sir, don't make me have to get violent. Mac!" he said to one of the officers. "Check that thing out." "Yes, sir," said the younger officer, who immediately knelt down next to the chair. "You know, I'm getting rather tired of people waving guns in my face today," the doctor commented. "That's enough. Now, please," Bottroff said. The Brigadier chose this moment to step in. Putting on the demeanor that had served him well through a lifetime of military service, he said to Bottroff, "That will be quite enough, Lieutenant." Bottroff turned to the Brigadier. "Who the hell are you?" Indicating the ID badge clipped to the lapel of his suit jacket, he replied, "I am Brigadier Alistair Lethbridge Stewart of the United Nations Intelligence Task Force. This man is the doctor, one of our top scientists. Since we are within the confines of the United Nations, we are on international soil, and therefore out of your jurisdiction. As the senior UN military officer present, I am taking charge of this situation." "Crime and Netley," Bottroff muttered, rolling his eyes. "Look, sir, all I want to do is defuse a bomb. If you and Toulouse-Lautrec over here want to watch, that's just fine with me. But, Lieutenant," this was the young officer who had been examining the bomb. "What is it, Mac?" "Sir, I don't know what half this equipment is, but there's definitely explosive in here. And, sir, it's one of Betancourt's." Bottroff winced. "You sure?" Mac nodded. Lethbridge Stewart asked, "You know this Betancourt person?" The lieutenant nodded. "Real nasty piece of work. He's a bomber, one of our biggest customers. Been trying to put him away for years, but he kept getting away from us. I suspect he has some high-powered help." The Brigadier frowned at that. He assumed Bottroff referred to the help of a government. He knew from experience that sometimes intelligence organizations employed people who built bombs, even if they had criminal records. He had never been happy about it. Bottroff, meanwhile, turned to Mac. "How long?" "Till it explodes? 15 minutes. "I mean to defuse it," Bottroff said impatiently. "Hell if I know, sir. Like I said, I don't know what half this stuff is. Could take 5 minutes, could take 3 days." "Lieutenant," the doctor said, "I am familiar with this equipment. I would strongly advise you to let me continue my examination of the bomb." The doctor's voice was quiet and vaguely threatening. Lethbridge Stewart knew that the doctor resorted to that tone of voice only when things were grim. And if I don't? Then the bomb explodes in 15 minutes and we all die." Bottroff sighed. "Can't argue with that. Go." "Thank you." The doctor knelt next to the bomb once again, examining it with the same device he'd scanned the room with. Bottroff, meanwhile, ordered the building evacuated. Several people went off to carry that out. Then the doctor took out his sonic screwdriver. The Brigadier couldn't help smiling. He hadn't seen that particular contraption of the doctor's in years. Its high-pitched whine caused all the police present to tense and grip their guns, prompting the Brigadier to reassure them that all was well. The doctor is simply examining the bomb. Bottroff said, unconvinced. "Oh dear." "What is it?" Lethbridge Stewart asked. The doctor stood up to face the Brigadier and the lieutenant. "It seems that Betancourt fellow did his work too well." Slowly, Bottroff asked, "What do you mean exactly?" "This is equipment I used to try to reconstruct the dematerialization circuit during my exile. It's tied into the explosive charge." Bottroff turned to face the Brigadier. "What did he just say?" "What does it mean, Doctor?" Lethbridge Stewart prompted. "It means that when this bomb goes off, it will destroy the entire solar system." "What?" "Across 1,000 years. Unbidden, the Brigadier's thoughts of that morning came back to him. Both times I encountered doctors out of sequence, so to speak, the entirety of time and space was threatened. The fault in the dematerialization circuit was such that it could rend the TARDIS asunder and spread it across a 1,000-year time period. If I can't defuse it, this entire star system will cease to exist in the year 1000. The havoc that would play with the space-time continuum is tremendous." "How does a simple American bomber manage such a feat?" the Brigadier asked. "I doubt he realized what he was doing, Brigadier, but that hardly matters now. I'm not sure I can defuse this with the equipment I have handy, and there's no time to retrieve the TARDIS from Fontaine's office." Inspiration struck the Brigadier. "We could use the recall device. It's an impound. I'm sure we could—" "Actually, I have it here," he said, producing the device from his pocket. "It was stolen by the same chap who put the bomb here. He used the recall device to summon me to Fontaine's office. In any case, it won't help now. The recall device broadcasts a signal to the TARDIS that it can home in on, but someone needs to be in the TARDIS for it to..." He trailed off, staring at the recall device. Then looked up suddenly, his eyes wide, his mouth spread into a huge grin. "That's it! Brigadier, you're a genius!" And then he knelt by the bomb once again. Bottroff turned to Lethbridge Stewart. "I lost track of this conversation about 10 steps ago." "I'm afraid I'm not that far in front of you," the Brigadier admitted. "Doctor, what is it you are doing?" "The recall device," the doctor explained while taking the device apart, "transmits a signal throughout time and space to find the TARDIS. If I can calibrate it to a particular time and place and hook up the device to the dematerialization circuit, I can send the explosion somewhere else." Bottroff looked at the Brigadier once again. "That makes sense to you?" As a matter of fact, it did. So much so he realized that he could even see the flaw in it. "Doctor, I thought that was a faulty dematerialization circuit." "Your problem, Brigadier, is that you're always letting inconsequential details get in the way of things." "That doesn't answer my question, Doctor." "Ah!" The Brigadier heard a wheezing sound, similar to that of the TARDIS dematerializing, but higher pitched. "Aha-wah?" Bottroff asked. "Take a look, Lieutenant," the doctor said, indicating the bottom of the overturned chair. All that remained of the bomb were a few bits of wiring. "Where'd it go?" Bottroff asked with a frown. 92nd century, far side of the galaxy, an area of deep space that has remained uninhabited and untraversed for millennia. I assure you, no one will even notice the explosion." Bottroff blinked. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, then finally said, "The hell with it. Mac, give the all clear. Let's get out of here." Within the half hour, Bottroff and his people had left, and the committee, Fontaine, and everyone else had re-entered the room, assured that everything was under control. Fontaine immediately announced that unless anyone had any objections, they should pick up where they left off and have the doctor appear before the committee. Several committee members said they wished to adjourn for the day in light of the bomb threat, but Fontaine said, "If it please the committee, I think that would be unnecessary and possibly dangerous. As we saw today, there are unique threats to this world cropping up every day. For every second that UNIT's British division is shut down pending the results of these hearings, that is 1 second that it can't halt one of these threats. In addition, the doctor is an extremely busy individual, and to keep him waiting for 24 hours after he so kindly dismantled the bomb that endangered all of us would be discourteous, to say the least." The Brigadier smiled, musing on how easily lawyers could take adverse circumstances and manipulate them for their own ends. By nightfall, the doctor was relieved to find that he had answered all of the committee's questions. The committee members obviously understood only a small fraction of the details, but, combined with reams of paperwork, videotape, and other material submitted by Fontaine, they seemed to accept the necessity of his requisitions. Of course, he thought, any rational person would accept that necessity without the need for hearings. Pity committees are rarely staffed by rational persons. At noon the following day, the committee formally announced its findings. There would be no need to shut down the British division, as its appropriations were, though occasionally eccentric, more or less in order. Certainly enough so that neither further investigation nor shutting them down was necessary. "Well, goodbye, Brigadier," the doctor said shortly thereafter, standing outside his TARDIS in Fontaine's office and shaking Lethbridge Stewart's hand. "Glad I could be of service once again." "Always a pleasure, Doctor." Turning to shake Fontaine's hand, the doctor said, "And may I say, Mr. Fontaine, that your work was impeccable." Thank you." Fontaine, the doctor noticed, was having difficulty taking his eyes off the TARDIS. "Glad to meet you." "Yes." He broke the handshake quickly and stepped back. Grinning, the doctor stepped into the TARDIS and was off. As his vessel moved away from Earth, he noticed a signal. It seemed to come from a TARDIS. Then he realized that it was the signal from the recall device, moving forward through both time and space to carry the explosion to that far-off area of interstellar space. No doubt someone else might encounter it in the future. He paused for a moment, considering the long-term consequences of what he had done. There would, of course, be consequences, there almost always were. But he was a Time Lord, not a lawyer. Such consequences did not fall under his purview. Or did they? Shaking his head as if to brush off an insect, he set the coordinates for pastures new. It is really hard to find copies of this book. It came out 24 years ago from a publisher who no longer has the rights to the property, and it's also has a certain value to it because it has, as I mentioned, the first ever Doctor Who story by Stephen Moffat. Plus, it's got me in it, but I doubt that matters so much. In addition to me and Mr. Moffat, we've also got Peter Anghelides, Stephen Bowkett, Colin Brake, Guy Clapperton, Craig Hinton, Ben Jeeps, Jackie Marshall, and Gareth Roberts. All have stories in this, featuring each of the first 7 Doctors, as they were the only ones that existed at the time we wrote it. By the time the book came out, the 8th Doctor movie had premiered, but he hadn't been in any fiction yet. Anyway, Thank you very much for watching. Please check me out online at DeCandido.net. You can read my blog at DeCandido.wordpress.com. And please support me at patreon.com/crad. Thank you very much. See you on Wednesday, and please stay safe.